I woke up one day with my name mentioned over 500 times. While the rich and powerful remained protected by reduction, my name was exposed to the world. Now reporters from across the globe contact me. I cannot live without looking over my shoulder. I can only imagine the long-term impact this mistake will have on my life.
Now is the time for Congress to act. Epstein was not alone. Several prominent male executives resigned from their powerful positions after this matter became widely politicized. Of course, this doesn't amount to guilt, but we still must work openly and transparently to uncover the truth. I call on Congress to provide the women who have been victimized by Epstein with a public hearing specifically centered around the survivors. Give these victims their opportunity to testify under oath in front of Congress with the power of sworn testimony. Each and every woman should have her day to tell her story in public if she wishes, and then her testimony should be permanently entered into the congressional record. Then, and only then, we will have the truth.
He's saying that I've never been in Epstein files. Trump is denying. Melania is denying. So many people are denying that there wasn't in Epstein files.
Mr. President, the First Lady last week called on Congress to further look into and uncover the truth on the Epstein files, the Epstein saga. Yeah. Do you believe that there should be a public hearing for more of these Epstein survivors?
Well, I'm okay with it. I think we've had a lot of public hearings. I'm okay with it, but I understand that the women didn't want to go under oath. That's what I heard, that the women, the victims or whatever, they refused to go under oath, which was a little surprising. Now, Melania felt strongly about it because she was accused of that I met her through Epstein, but it turned out to be totally false. It was a false.
Hi, it's Anushka DiGiorgio, survivor of Epstein and Maxwell. I just watched a video where President Trump said that he heard that the survivors had refused to testify under oath before Congress.
She was referring to this video right here.
The victims or whatever, they refused to go under oath.
It's not victims or whatever, it's survivors. And here's Anushka calling Trump out on this lie.
As one of the survivors who came to a private meeting with Congress back last September, I can tell you that I shared information and I didn't testify under oath, but I'm happy to put my hand on any book you like.
Some heartbreaking testimony from Jeffrey Epstein survivors. They've gathered in what they call the scene of the crime, Palm Beach, Florida. Democrats are running this hearing and they're looking very closely at a plea deal from close to 2 decades ago which allowed the pedophile to avoid a federal trial despite significant evidence relating to charges of the solicitation of minors. Instead, Epstein was able to enjoy a relatively cushy sentence of 13 months in a local jail in which he was able to leave each day and go about his business. Survivors today say that if his crimes had been punished properly at that time, so much of the abuse over the next couple of years and longer could have been avoided.
He abused so many girls after 2009 at the same exact time that I was asking the government why he got the deal and why they violated my rights.
Virginia Giuffre was among those who entered Jeffrey Epstein's circle as a teenager when he was in Palm Beach, Florida. During the hearing, Democrats have also said that they believe the Department of Justice is still holding half of the Epstein files despite a legal requirement to release all of them. This is just more proof that this issue is not going away and it is continuing to dog Donald Trump's second term.
You know, we're going to be talking to someone next week, Pam Bondi. And so do you have any suggestions on what we should ask her tomorrow? We can start with Ms. Wild or anyone who'd like to answer that.
I think there's a lot to ask her, right? But Do we believe anything that's going to come out of her mouth?
Let's pretend yes. For a
yeah. Okay. I definitely. Why? Who are we covering for? Like, you were willing to lose your job to cover up for these people. What do they have on you? Because I'd like to know. You're a woman. You're a mother. And you look at us, it couldn't even look at the survivors. So what's your part in this?
Can I add to that? Process. What was the process? And we would ask the same of Todd Blanche. What was the process for moving Ghislaine Maxwell?
Trump's mass deportation agenda and our ongoing Epstein investigation has brought me to Florida, and I'm here with two of my colleagues.
Right now we're in Orlando, and House Democrats are going to be focusing on how ICE operates in the South and what it looks like when the state is fully complicit to the kidnapping and mass deportation of our neighbors.
And tomorrow we're headed to West Palm to hear directly from Epstein survivors who deserve transparency just like the American people. And we're going to keep that focus up until we have a full release of the file.
My name is Danny Bensky. I was abused by Jeffrey Epstein in 2004 and 2005. That was 8 years after Maria Farmer first reported Jeffrey to the FBI. Although discussing my abuse is far from easy, I live with diagnosed PTSD from that experience. My story is actually one of the safest stories to tell. The key abuser who caused me physical harm is dead. It's imperative to understand that the stories you are hearing today are a tiny fraction of the whole. I am one of more than 1,200 girls and women. The passage of the Epstein Files Transparency Act was a moment in which survivors hoped and believed that we might see some reckoning. But the system yet again failed survivors. In the first round of documents, I saw my name in 2 places. Then in the January dump, there were more, and the redactions were far, far worse. These files displayed my name, my phone number, my old address, where I worked at the time, where I was studying, and other identifying information.
How far from the truth are we?
Very far. I think we're very far from the truth, but we're getting closer. I just think there's a lot that's going to be coming out over the next few months.
So what ultimately do you want to see?
Well, we want to see justice. We're not quite sure what that looks like, and maybe just understanding what's really going on. And what's most important is also just protecting the survivors that names are being released with the information. I think that's the hardest part, is the survivors really understanding the impact that has on them, re-traumatizing them, and making sure the information is correct as well. We desperately want to see more. We desperately want to see the files and the information that's out there. Yes, of course.
Full disclosure?
Full disclosure. We need full transparency of what's going on. Everybody wants that. I do believe the focus is so set on Trump that we're not really getting to the other issues and the other problems, the other perpetrators, the other enablers, because the focus is so on him. So this is what I've been speaking out about for months now, is that we need to know more information about others. But things have come to light now that now I'm just a little confused on, what's really going on.
I want to start by talking about the Epstein survivors. I've been covering this hearing all day. The hearing is concluding, and the survivors have made clear in their first public remarks since the files were released, or some of them, that what the Department of Justice has done is unacceptable. I want you to begin by listening to Danielle Bensky, a survivor of Jeffrey Epstein.
Together, they submitted 350 victims' names to the DOJ as names that needed to be redacted prior to the deadline on December 19th. In the first round of documents, I saw my name in 2 places. Then in the January dump, there were more, and the redactions were far, far worse. These files displayed my name, my phone number, my old address, where I worked at the time, where I was studying,
and other identifying information. What's important to understand is that these documents weren't just somehow overlooked and not redacted at all. On one document, my nickname, Danny, redacted, while Danielle Hannah Bensky is left completely unredacted. I am just one of the hundreds of survivors exposed like this.
She made clear that because of the failure to redact her name, her personal information was exposed, but she wasn't the only one. Another survivor, Ms. Rosa, testified today who says that she was a Jane Doe. She kept her identity protected. She woke up one morning, her name was mentioned in the Epstein files more than 500 separate times, exposing her identity to the world.
I eventually found the courage to reach out for help. I stepped forward along other survivors, hoping those who allowed this to happen will be held accountable. I kept my identity protected as Jane Doe. I woke up one day with my name mentioned over 500 times. While the rich and powerful remain protected by redaction, my name was exposed to the world. Now reporters from across the globe contact me. I cannot live without looking over my shoulder. I can only imagine the long-term impact this mistake will have on my life.
Her name was mentioned 500 times. She was a Jane Doe. She kept her name concealed from the public. She didn't want the public to know that she was a survivor. She didn't have a choice.
This Epstein survivor came forward today to give her story, amongst many others, of how the Department of Justice completely doxed them and mishandled their cases in the Epstein files.
I eventually found the courage to reach out for help. I stepped forward along other survivors, hoping those who allowed this to happen will be held accountable. I kept my identity protected as Jane Doe. I woke up one day with my name mentioned over 500 times. While the rich and powerful remain protected by redaction, my name was exposed to the world. Now reporters from across the globe contact me. I cannot live without looking over my shoulder. I can only imagine the long-term impact this mistake will have on my life.
Like she said, her name was mentioned over 500 times in the Epstein files, and it wasn't even supposed to be mentioned once. And she was not the only survivor that came forward about this. Multiple said that their names were included without their permission. And now this is going to completely upend their lives, as they are now completely on public display without their permission. Imagine not only your entire traumatic, detailed situation is plastered online, trending everywhere, and now suddenly, after being promised it wouldn't, your name, your legal name, is attached to it, and now everyone you know knows every little detail about what happened to you specifically. It's horrifying, and it's one of the biggest reasons why a lot of survivors and victims do not come forward about their cases, because it's almost more dangerous to do so than not. And that is just the true depravity of this country being run into the ground by a ring of pedophiles. That is it on display right in front of our eyes. And now these survivors have to be well-known public figures because they've been paraded around for the trauma that they had to endure right in front of their abusers. They are standing in Mar-a-Lago in this video talking to their abusers. Imagine how brave you have to be as a survivor to come forward, recount what you've been through, and know that your abusers are watching this and are the very reason that nothing is being done about it. Imagine how brave you have to be. Never stop talking about this until justice is served. Never stop doing something until these people are behind bars or worse. Because every moment that they're not, another survivor has to come forward and risk their lives.
Jeffrey Epstein used a major American corporation to move women and girls across borders. We've known now for a couple of months that Epstein used an American Express black card. That's a card for American Express's most wealthy clients to book hundreds of international flight itineraries, primarily for women and girls from Eastern Europe. But new information from the files this week shows that this goes even deeper. Some of these itineraries were completely fabricated, created specifically to help women or girls obtain visas. Amex had a dedicated relationship manager on Epstein's account named Natasha Molokova, and emails appear to show her arranging fake booking itineraries for visa purposes. In one exchange from 2012, Epstein's assistant Leslie Groff contacted the Amex rep, asking her to arrange a fully refundable trip for a woman or girl who needed, in Groff's words, quote, proof of hotel stay in air for an interview with the consulate. The Amex rep wrote back asking directly, is this reservation needed only for visa purposes? It's against Amex policy. Molokova then offered a workaround anyway, saying she could hold a reservation for a hotel and accommodation until that evening. After the consulate appointment had taken place, Groff wrote back and told her to go ahead and cancel the trip. She signed off to Molokova with, "You've been great." Epstein's assistant Leslie Groff appears to have been central in coordinating all of these bookings, working directly with Amex's elite travel team, including Molokova. It's worth noting Groff has not been criminally charged. Her attorneys also say that she has no knowledge of any criminal activity related to Epstein. We've asked Amex whether their relationship manager Molokova raised red flags internally at the time, and whether she still works for American Express. For its part, earlier this year, Amex told us that it strongly condemns human trafficking, that it terminated Epstein's account after his 2019 arrest, and that it regrets having him as a customer. But what this ultimately shows us is how Epstein used his extraordinary wealth and the access that came with it to move young women and girls across the world through an iconic American company, and largely without scrutiny.
He said it privately, "My friends will get hurt." That is what Trump reportedly told people when they pushed him to release the Epstein files. Not the public version. The public version was that this was all a Democrat hoax, all fake, all nothing. But behind closed doors, according to a direct account, Trump was personally calling Speaker Johnson, Senate Leader Thune, and Attorney General Pam Bondi and telling all of them the same thing. Do not release the files. Stop this. People are going to get hurt. His friends, specifically his friends. Now hold that thought, because this week, something else happened that almost nobody noticed, and the timing is not a coincidence. A federal judge just threw out Trump's $10 billion defamation lawsuit against the Wall Street Journal and Rupert Murdoch. $10 billion. The lawsuit was over a Wall Street Journal article that described a letter, a sexually suggestive letter bearing Trump's signature that was included in a 2003 album compiled for Jeffrey Epstein's 50th birthday. Trump said the story was false and defamatory. The judge said Trump failed to argue the article was published with malicious intent. $10 billion. Gone. And here's the part that tells you everything about the timing. Literally minutes before that ruling came down, Trump was on television hinting that the Wall Street Journal had reached out about a possible settlement. He said, maybe they'd like us to drop that. And then that fast the case was dismissed by the court instead. But that detail got buried. You know why? Because the same weekend, Trump was publicly exploding at Fox News for allowing Democrats on air. He posted rants on Truth Social calling Congressman Ro Khanna a sleazebag. He went after Bill Maher. He threatened his own preferred network. And that story ate up all the oxygen. The Epstein lawsuit dismissal, barely a headline. That's not an accident. That's the strategy. Create noise over here so nobody looks over there. And while all of this is happening, the Epstein Files Transparency Act, an actual law, requires the Justice Department to release those files with only limited redactions. They have not complied. Thousands of documents have been illegally redacted, according to legal analysis. And the question being asked now is, who made those decisions? Who decided which documents to hide? Who decided what would embarrass who? Trump publicly called the whole thing a hoax. Privately, he told people his friends would get hurt. That part matters. Because a man who believes the files are fake has no reason to block their release. A man who believes his friends are in those files has every reason to. A Fox News poll this week showed 70% of Americans feel the economy is getting worse. Trump's approval sits at 42%. And the one story that could tell us the most about who Donald Trump actually is and who he actually protects that story is still being buried. They counted on you not connecting the dots. So connect them and share this before it disappears again.
And this is a field hearing that is focused on survivors. And I want to just make clear that this is not a formal hearing, because up until this point, even though my colleagues across the aisle have claimed that they want to hear from survivors, they have yet to call a real hearing on the Epstein case because they are trying to shield the president. And so Democrats are leading this field hearing. We've been working very closely with the Survivor Network, including Virginia Giuffre's family, World Without Exploitation, which helps to support survivors and is an important organization. But for me personally, New Mexico was one of the sites that Jeffrey Epstein used for his activities, that he victimized children and women. And we really want to expose and understand not just how he was able to abuse survivors, but how he abused the systems themselves. And in some ways, West Palm Beach was the testing grounds. That's where he built his crime system. That is where he abused local authority systems by, donating money to local political officials, giving money and donations to the police department, and escaping justice. And by the time he moved his operations to New Mexico, as we're learning through our Truth Commission, we know that it was a well-honed system, and he was doing the same kinds of not only exploitation of women and girls here, but using our local political systems to escape justice. And so we're really looking to understand what exactly happened in West Palm Beach, why he was able to escape effective prosecution, why he was allowed to continue to abuse women, and how this system of abuse, then he exported it and made New Mexico ultimately his next victim.
In a last-ditch effort, Trump says to release the Epstein files, and people are trying to figure out what his angle is, because here's the post he made today, 1 hour ago. As I said on Friday night aboard Air Force One to the fake news media, House Republicans should vote to release the Epstein files because we have nothing to hide, and it's time to move on from this Democrat hoax perpetrated by radical left lunatics in order to deflect from the great success of the Republican Party, including our recent victory on the Democrat shutdown. The Department of Justice has already turned over tens of thousands of pages to the public on Epstein and are looking at various Democrat operatives, Bill Clinton, Reid Hoffman, Larry Summers, etc., and their relationship to Epstein, and the House Oversight Committee can have whatever they are legally entitled to. I don't care. All I do care about is that Republicans get back on point, which is the economy affordability, where we are winning big. Our victory on reducing inflation from the highest level in history to practically nothing, bringing down the prices for American people, delivering historic tax cuts, gaining trillions of dollars of investment into America. A record. The rebuilding of our military, securing our border, deporting criminal illegal aliens, ending men and women's sports, stopping trans for everyone, and so much more. Nobody cared about Jeffrey Epstein when he was alive, and if the Democrats had anything, they would have released it before our landslide election victory. Some members of the Republican Party are being used, and we can't let that happen. Let's start talking about the Republican Party's record-setting achievements and not fall into the Epstein trap, which is actually a curse on the Democrats, not us. Make America great again. Now, there's 3 takeaways from this. Number 1, Trump realizes he has nowhere to go. This is because as of yesterday, MAGA has been so mad, not only have they been silently leaving and vocally leaving, they're now burning their hats again. This was just yesterday. Remember when they did this back in July too? And how long have we been saying MAGA is on fire? They're imploding from the inside. Trump doesn't have a choice but to look like he backs the release of the Epstein files, even though he's the one that's been telling Republicans to block it and has not released it. Now, he's calling for a vote to release it. However, he can release it right now, and he still hasn't done that. Let's also not forget that the FBI has been redacting Trump's name and other big government officials out of the Epstein list. And he just put Pam Bondi to investigate the Epstein list after claiming to not care about it just yesterday.
Do you know that an overwhelming amount of them were men? There's so many men out there who are suffering through this, and so many men out there there's so many men out there who support the survivors. It's not just a women's problem, right?
Massive Jeffrey Epstein news. This one is huge. The victims are saying that they are done waiting for the government and they're going to release their own client list. I mean, think about that. Survivors who lived through the abuse are now saying, we know the names, we were there, we were trafficked to them, and we're going to put the truth out ourselves. This has everybody thinking this thing's about to explode. Now, this does come after the DOJ claimed that there was no evidence of a list, which we all thought was odd because there was thousands of documents that were released, but most of them were blacked out, which was useless to all of us. Now, at a rally today on Capitol Hill, survivors stood with lawmakers from both parties saying the establishment is covering up for powerful men. I mean, one victim flat out said Epstein wasn't just a predator. He was an international trafficker, and the people who protected him are still being shielded. I mean, maybe this is what pissed Dan Bongino off so bad. And here's the kicker. These survivors say they'll compile the names confidentially for survivors and by survivors. If that happens, it could blow the lid off everything.
Please don't stop talking about the Epstein files.
This committee must issue further subpoenas and required alleged co-conspirators, enablers, financiers, and witnesses to testify under oath.
Survivors of Epstein's trafficking ring are testifying today in front of the House Oversight Committee, publicly, for the first time. And one of the most powerful moments from today came from Sky Roberts, Virginia Giuffre's little brother, who is saying her words where she can't.
Obviously wish Virginia was here to do this herself, but I will do my best. For years, survivors have been asked the same question. Who were the names? I will say them for her as her little brother. Please name a person that Ghislaine Maxwell directed you to have sex with. Prince Andrew, Glenn Dubin. Redacted is another one. Ghislaine Maxwell asked you to have sex with Redacted?
Who is Redacted? And why is his name still being protected?
Hey family, just touching down in Palm Beach for a field hearing on an oversight to return to the scene of the crime where so many young girls were first victims of Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. Of course, this is a fight for the Epstein survivors, but for all survivors. We're looking to create a new blueprint for accountability, to call out these systemic harms and abuses that not only occurred for the Epstein survivors, but are happening right now in communities all across this country. Again, a reckoning is on the way. Tomorrow at 10 a.m., and I hope you will watch, you'll be able to hear from the survivors directly, from experts, from witnesses, for yourself, about the harrowing crimes that occurred here and the failures of accountability.
Today, Epstein survivors held what's called a shadow hearing in Palm Beach County. And the reason they had to do this should horrify and enrage all of us. A shadow hearing is what happens when lawmakers and survivors decide that these institutions that should be holding people accountable are not doing their jobs. So in lieu of them doing their actual jobs, survivors and lawmakers hold a public hearing anyways. And if you haven't done it already, you absolutely need to watch it. But I'm going to show you one of the most powerful clips. This is Courtney Wild. She's one of the Epstein survivors. Take a look.
When I was 14 years old, I was abused by Jeffrey Epstein. He abused me until I was 17 years old. What happened to me was terrible, but what happened after that by our own government changed my life just as much. I came here today to ask for one simple thing, to make sure this never happens again. I filed a case under the Crime Victims' Rights Act because government secretly made a deal with Jeffrey Epstein. They signed a non-prosecution agreement. They made the deal behind closed doors. They never told me, and they never told any of us. Instead, they sent letters telling me to be patient, even though they knew the case was already over. For years, I believed there was an investigation happening. There wasn't. When I found out the truth, I went to my lawyer, Brad Edwards. He took my case in 2008, and he fought for me against the government for over a decade. We wanted to do the right thing for all victims. Together, we wanted answers to a simple question: how could this happen? We had to fight all the way to the 11th Circuit, which took years to get the emails between the government and Jeffrey's lawyers to help us understand what happened. When we finally got them, they showed something I will never forget. The government wasn't trying to negotiate with Epstein's lawyers. It looked like the government was trying to make him happy. They were trying to make sure that the punishment they were going to give him was okay with him. It seemed like they had forgotten that there were 40 of us kids who had been abused by him. I was so confused because where I come from, if you commit a crime, you go to jail. I have never heard the feds of letting you help them decide which crimes they're going to charge you with, or if you're cool with how long you're going to spend in jail. But I thought, what do I know? Maybe that's how it works for rich guys. That's how it did work for Jeffrey Epstein. Finally, after 10 years of fighting, in 2019, a federal judge finally ruled that my rights and that the rights of other victims were violated by the non-prosecution agreement. But there was nothing that could be done about it. There was no remedy. I just want to say it again. I'm sorry, I have to. The court found that the government violated the law and nothing happened. That means the law, the Crime Victims' Rights Act, 18 U.S.C. 3771, does not matter. And if the law has no consequences, it doesn't protect anybody.
Major Epstein updates. Everyone has been asking me for this, so here they are. Survivors of Epstein are testifying publicly under oath today in West Palm Beach, Florida, as part of a hearing organized by the House Oversight Committee. This is designed to re-examine the controversial 2008 non-prosecution agreement that Epstein entered into that allowed him to evade federal justice. So all this testimony will now become part of the public record. Now we have more information about Howard Lutnick. He testified behind closed doors last Wednesday to the House Oversight Committee, as many questions have been raised about his relationship with Epstein and business dealings he had with Epstein. And it looks like the two of them entered into business in 2012 to buy an ad agency. This completely contradicts what Lutnick said on the Podforce One podcast last year, where he said he had a one-and-done meeting with Epstein, went to his apartment, said he was gross, said he would never meet with him or have anything to do with him again. And then we learned that he and his family went and visited Epstein Island later, and that they've had business dealings together. And we're just learning the very beginnings of what these business dealings were. There is a lot more to uncover with Howard Lutnick and his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. And we're also hearing new reporting now of John Kerry, the former Secretary of State and presidential candidate, having a friendly relationship with Epstein. Kerry is mentioned in emails in the Epstein files. So you can go to the Epstein archive and search his name and you will find information about it. And this is something we're going to look more into, but there are connections linking John Kerry to Epstein. John Kerry flew on Epstein's private jet, according to sworn testimony by Epstein's former chef on an FBI 302 form. Photos have emerged showing John Kerry in Epstein's home with his staff. We know that Epstein donated $77,000 to John Kerry's political action committees from 1999 to 2003. And Epstein's survivor, Virginia Giuffre, said she saw John Kerry with Epstein during the time she was trafficked by him. Rep. Ro Khanna is now calling for John Kerry to testify before the House Oversight Committee. Bombshell stuff, guys. Doesn't matter if it's Democrat, Republican, or what. Anyone that had any involvement, that had any wrongdoing involving Epstein, needs to be brought to justice and held accountable. Let me know if you agree. Comment, like, share, spread the word, follow, subscribe, and I'll see you back here for the 411.
Which people were accusing him of trying to block the vote with the claim of it's being investigated by the DOJ, so we can't vote on it right now, which he still might use. The problem for Trump is if they did redact any type of evidence that he was in it, there's no way he could have redacted all of the evidence. One slight slip up and everybody will be able to tell that these records were severely amended. But I also imagine that the impeachment process will become a lot easier once these files are released. And with the technology we have today, I wouldn't be surprised if there was a way to unredact the names. It's too late, Trump. No matter what you do, we know what you did. And if we find you nowhere in the Epstein files doing nothing bad with all the evidence we have, with the less than 25% MAGA remaining, where are you going to run? Trump may have been able to convince other PDFs to defend him. Newsflash, the majority of America wants to protect children. And with Trump throwing people away like a piece of garbage, he hasn't realized until now just how bad it's gotten with MAGA. They are now split between Marjorie Taylor Greene, Tucker Carlson, Nick Fuentes, and the list goes on. Because the fact of the matter is Trump is a terrible leader. So when he's asked about Nick Fuentes, who has been criticizing him, calling him names, calling him a failure, and Tucker Carlson, who's been turning against him, Trump actually backs down in this clip and says he likes the both of them because he realizes he needs to recruit more allies. This happened just today. Let's take a look at what he said.
Carlson recently had a friendly interview with anti-Semite Nick Fuentes. Tucker Carlson. What role do you think Tucker Carlson should play in the Republican Party and the conservative movement going forward?
Well, I found him to be good. I mean, he said good things about me over the years. And I think he's good. We've had some good interviews. I did an interview with him. We had 300 million hits. You know that. Look, I can't tell him. Will you let me finish my say? You are the worst. You're with Bloomberg, right? You are the worst. I don't know why they even have you. We've had some great interviews with Tucker Carlson, but you can't tell him who to interview. I mean, if he wants to interview Nick Fuentes, I don't know much about him, but if he wants to do it, get the word out. Let him, people have to decide. Ultimately, people have to decide.
Bear in mind, Nick Fuentes has had nothing but negative things to say about Trump all year long. Telling MAGA to not vote for him and calling Trump a traitor is kind of what he's known for right now. The Nazi that no longer supports Trump. But let's take a look at this video right here.
I don't want their support anymore. Well, fine. You don't get any more. Nobody should vote for Trump. Nobody should vote for Republicans. And what needs to happen next, by the way, the Republicans must be in the midterms. That's what must come of this. Trump must fucking pay for this statement to say, I don't want.
Anyway, thank you for watching Great Minds Blacks.
Thank you for watching Great Minds Blacks.